Hi, my name is Horace Wilson, and welcome to this presentation on Mark chapter 10, verse 42 through 45. My hope and my prayer today is that you'll be able to gain something from this conversation, from this talk that we're going to have about this passage, and that you'll be able to apply its theme in your life. So first I'll just give you a little just synopsis, a little play-by-play of what we'll do, and then I'll dive right into it. So first, I'm going to read or discuss a verse before the passage, and then I'll go into the actual reading of the passage. After that, we'll discuss in depth the theme of this passage, and then after that, go into practical application, and then we'll be done for today. So without further ado, let's get started. So before the passage, we can dive in to Mark chapter 10, verse 35. Before this talk that Jesus had with his disciples, he was approached by James and John in verse 35, where he is asked by them, basically I'm paraphrasing, Jesus, please do whatever we ask, and we're going to ask you a question, and please just answer it. And Jesus says, go ahead, go for it. And so they ask to be at the right and left hand of Jesus when he goes up to the Father to be with him in glory. Jesus, of course, addresses this and says that's not in his power to be able to do that. That's in the Father's hand to be able to say where people will be at. But he does tell them that they will drink of the same cup as he will, and that they don't know what they're asking. Because James and John asked Jesus this, the disciples become indignant. They become angry, as I'm sure most people would if somebody's trying to, cut you in the line, or trying to get in on something that you were trying to do, or just trying to get above you, like sibling rivalry, stuff like that. So it makes sense they got angry. But then Jesus goes into the verse that we're reading today of Mark chapter 10, verse 42 to 45, which I'll read now. This is the NIV version, and it says, Jesus called them together and said, you know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be the first must be slave of all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. So just to sum up that verse and what it means, Jesus wanted to show them how others used their authority, and then he wanted to show them how he used his authority. So he showed them the Gentile way of the authority, or you could say the worldly way of authority, lording it over people, using your positional authority to influence people in the way that you want it to be. Most times we see for selfish gain, or not for the benefit and well-being of the other people that are underneath this leader. Jesus wanted to demonstrate his way of authority, his way of leading with a servant's heart, of truly loving people, whether they're under you or over you, and status not mattering, but love being the main key, the main point. Jesus even said in this verse, in this passage, he says that he didn't come to be served, but to serve, and he was God. So, like he wanted the disciples, he wants all of his followers, he wants all people to follow in this example. And he demonstrated this through his own life. Jesus showed this in many examples, three namely being when he washed the feet of the disciples in John chapter 13, just showing that he was being a servant to his disciples. Even though he was God, he still washed their feet, So it's like, that's one example. Another, when he listened to his mother Mary and he made the wine, his mom asked him to do something. He didn't have to do it. He could have been like, I'm God, go buy your own wine. But he didn't do that. He humbled himself and he did what his mother asked. Lastly is, Jesus, ultimately he died for our sins, as John chapter 3 verse 16 states. And there was no greater humbling that God could have done than to lay down his life and to allow and to give his life for all of us so that we could be saved. He didn't have to do that. He was in a position where we were the ones that had erred in the garden with Adam and Eve, and God could have judged us, but he didn't. He instead sent his son so that we could have life. There's no greater humility than that. So Jesus time and time again shows us the example of what it means to be the greatest. The greatest is to be the least, which is what I believe the theme of this passage is. The least is the greatest. application points that we can, how we can use this passage in our lives is to do the same thing in our homes, at our jobs, in our communities, to lead with a servant's heart, to not lead with tyrannical methods, not to do stuff from a selfish place or to make life miserable for people who are under us if we're in positions of authority, but to have a heart of love and to use our positional authority to love people. So application of this passage would be to, posture yourself in a way at your job or wherever you're at in authority, to be willing, to be eager to help, not in a fashion that we're hungry to be on the top, or we're just, primed to be able to say, hey, like, you do this or go do that, and to flex our muscles, if you will, but to show that we have a heart of consideration, of care, of love, of putting others before ourselves. Me being in the military, it's a big thing, like rank can be everything at times. Everybody's always shooting for the next highest rank, but if in my circumstance, not using my rank for those that are below me in a way that's like pressuring them or that's abusing my rank, but using my rank to help them, to let them know, hey, I'm here for you, and I'm going to do everything in my power, no matter where I'm at in the rank status, to be a help to you. So yeah, that's the presentation of Mark chapter 10, verse 42 through 45. I pray that this was a blessing to you, and I would just encourage you to be the least, to be the greatest. God bless.